Okay, let's unpack this. Think about the art world back in the mid-19th century. It's all history paintings, mythology, right?
Just standard stuff, yeah. Very established.
Then picture an artist deciding, I'm going to paint my friends hanging out at a concert. Or just, a regular woman on a balcony.
And then famously, a nude woman having a picnic with two fully dressed guys.
Exactly. That's the kind of jolt Edouard Manet gave the system.
And it wasn't just what he painted, though that was controversial enough. It was really how he painted it. He was changing the whole visual language, really shaking things up.
Which is exactly what we're diving into today. Edouard Manet, this hugely important figure, people often call him one of the fathers of modern art.
Definitely a key player.
So we've got a good pile of material here, a big catalog raisonnés, which is the scholarly list of all his works. Plus, we've got critical bits from writers like Zola, and these detailed notes on his life, year by year.
Right. And our mission here is to pull from all this, to really get a handle on Manet's life, his art, why it caused such a stir, and how he changed things. We're digging out the key insights, the interesting facts, straight from these sources.
Okay, let's jump right in then. Manet's vision. What was he actually trying to do? The sources keep mentioning his interest in le beau moderne, the beauty of modern life.
That was central, yeah, capturing the world around him. But, it raises a question the sources touch on, too. Was he literally the first?
Good point.
Our material mentions people like Baudelaire, Gautier, even his own teacher Couture, kind of suggesting modern subjects could be okay. There are ideas floating around about painting, like trains or railway stations.
Right, I remember reading that, but there's a difference between suggesting it and doing it. Duret, who's quoted here, calls Manet one of the real inventors.
Exactly. He wasn't just theorizing, he put it on the canvas. Think about La Musique au Tuileries Garden. The sources call it incredibly original for its time, like a superb report, almost capturing his own social scene. And yeah, you can maybe see hints of 18th century prints or Daumier or...
Influences, sure.
But the final thing was something completely new.
And it got criticized for its look, didn't it?
Yeah.
Something about crammed informality or lack of central focus.
Yeah, people didn't know what to make of that composition. But what's interesting is Zola, his friend, apparently defended it. He saw that looseness, that lack of a single focal point, as deliberate.
So it was intentional, capturing the bustle.
Exactly. That was the whole point, according to Zola. It reflected modern life.
And this choice, painting his own world, obviously had a massive impact, especially on the Impressionists who came after him.
Oh, huge. Manet basically gave them the green light, showed it could be done, déjeuner sur l'herbe, despite the scandal.
Yeah.
The sources explicitly call it a principal source for big paintings by Monet, like his Women in a Garden. And Bazile's work, Berthe Morisot's outdoor scenes too, they're linked back to Déjeuner in our material.
And isn't there that quote from Zola? After seeing Déjeuner, he said painting life-size people in a landscape was every painter's dream.
Yeah, Manet made that dream seem possible, practical even.
So he showed that everyday modern life could be a grand subject.
Absolutely. Worthy of a big canvas, serious artistic treatment.
Okay, so that's the what. But the sources make a big deal about how he painted too. His methods were just as radical.
Definitely. Zola's comments, which are in our sources, are really sharp here. He said Manet was almost totally guided by his eyes, seeing things in broad masses of color.
Big blocks of color.
Yeah, often pale colors, Zola noted. And he talked about a kind of gentle roughness in the paint.
Rough but gentle. How does that work?
Well, it looked a bit rough from a distance, maybe, but up close you saw a really delicate touch. The sources say he used only a brush, and that very discreetly, often just a single coat of paint.
No thick layers like the academics.
Nope, very direct. And his drawing process sounds fascinatingly intense.
How so?
The material says he'd draw with his brush right on the canvas, then just wipe it out and start again if it wasn't right. Multiple attempts.
Wow, drawing with a brush, constantly correcting.
That's it. So drawing was fundamental, even if the final look felt spontaneous. It's that rigor, that search for the exact right shape or line that led someone like Jamaat, who's quoted, to say his art aimed for the eternal.
Aiming for the eternal with a single, direct brushstroke. That's quite something. So what did this look like on the canvas specifically? The sources mention key stylistic things.
Yeah, they talk about using line as a means of separation between forms, reducing chiaroscuro, that play of light and shadow, to the smallest terms.
Less shadow.
Much less. And often sort of disregarding traditional three-dimensional space, flattening things out.
Whoa. So ditching shadows and depth, that's breaking like rule number one of traditional painting.
Totally. But the effect was really striking. The sources describe a strong sharpness of figures, really vivid coloration, even in the blacks, which were apparently very rich.
And the figures look kind of flat.
Like flattened relief is how it's put, almost detached from the atmosphere. It gives them this really immediate, almost confrontational presence.
Okay, I can see now why his nudes, like Olympia or the woman in Déjeuner sur l'herbe, both modeled by Victorine Meurent, right?
Yeah.
Were so incredibly shocking.
Exactly. Our sources contrast them with traditional nudes by Titian or Goya. Those were usually idealized, mythological.
Right, representing beauty with a capital B.
But Manet, the source says, cared not a fig for that kind of conventional beauty here. He painted the figure almost like an idol or a marionette. It was about the art, the visual impact, absorbing beauty, truth, life in art itself, not just depicting an ideal woman.
That's a radical shift in priority. Were there other influences feeding this unique style? The sources mentioned Spain.
Yeah, his trip there in 1865 was important. The material says he kind of recognized his own artistic leanings there. You can see echoes of Velázquez, maybe Goya, in things like his equestrian portraits or Christ derided after that trip.
And Japanese prints? Photography.
Both mentioned, yes. Japanese art influenced his way of composing. The clear-cut definition of shapes, the flat areas of color right next to each other, chromatic positioning is the term used, bold compositions.
And photography.
Shared interest with Degas, apparently, linked to this desire to document and capture the contemporaneity, the nowness of things. So it's this mix, tradition, Spain, Japan, photography, all filtered through his own way of seeing.
Okay, so he's building this unique vision.
Yeah.
But showing it to the world, that wasn't easy.
No, not at all. The level of conflict with the official Salon, the art establishment, is really striking in the source material.
So many rejections are listed. Déjeuner sur l'herbe in 63 famously kicked out. Olympia, even though the source says it was painted with consummate sureness, caused a huge scandal when it was finally shown.
And it kept happening. Jeune homme en costume de majot, The Escape of Rochefort, Masked Ball at the Opera, Nana, Chemin de Fer. Major works we know today, rejected.
Which led to the Salon des Refusés in 1863. The exhibition of the rejects, where Déjeuner ended up. It sounds like the establishment saw his work as like an attack or something.
They certainly seem to. But we have Manet's own words from the foreword to his solo show in 1867, which are really revealing. He talks about the sincerity of his work.
Sincerity?
Yeah, he felt it was his sincerity that made it look like an act of protest to people stuck in old ways. But he insists, I never wished to protest.
He just wanted to be himself. That's a really clear statement of intent.
And he knew he had to keep showing his work. He says he needed to exhibit so people could get used to it, make it familiar, so it could eventually be understood and accepted. He believed time would soften the initial shock.
He sounds quite confident, actually. He mentions recognizing talent in others and feeling that the men of real discernment were starting to get it. Just needed the public to come around.
And eventually they did, sort of. It's interesting how the official recognition came. 1881, he finally gets a second-place medal at the Salon for 2 portraits.
Which meant he didn't have to submit to the jury anymore, right? Or to concours.
Exactly. But even that, the source notes, caused an outcry in official circles.
Can't win.
Seems like it. But he did get the Legion of Honor, too, partly thanks to his friend A. Proust pulling some strings. So recognition came, but man, it was a fight.
Let's shift gears slightly. What about Manet, the person? His life, his circle. The chronology in the sources gives us some snapshots.
Yeah, little details emerge, like meeting Victorine Meurent in 1862, the model for Olympia and Déjeuner, inheriting money in 63, but being incapable of handling it.
Relatable. There's the Spain trip in 65, and something I didn't expect. He was in the military during the Franco-Prussian War, 1870-71, a lieutenant under Meissonier, another painter.
Yeah, quite a detail. Then back to art life. New studio, trips to Holland and Venice, this ambitious idea for decorating the Hôtel de Ville in Paris that sadly didn't happen.
And he seems to have had this amazing network of friends. The sources list so many artists, writers, critics who were around him, visiting, sitting for portraits.
Definitely. Besides Victorine, there was Berthe Morisot. She posed for him a lot and married his brother, Eugene, and his only actual pupil, Eva Gonzalès. The chronology even mentions Morisot feeling some artistic and womanly jealousy toward Gonzalès.
Wow, it's a very human detail.
Isn't it? Brings it to life. And then key friends like Émile Zola, defender, friend, sat for that famous portrait.
And Mallarmé, the poet. Manet illustrated his translation of Poe's The Raven.
That's right. And A. Proust, the politician friend who helped with the Legion of Honor. Plus, Degas, Fantin Latour, critics like Chesneau, musicians, social figures like Mary Laurent, Isabelle Lamagnier. His world really fed his art.
You absolutely see that in his later paintings. The sources talk about cafe concerts, brasseries.
Like Bouveau's de Box, the beer drinker, or that one with George Moore at a cafe.
And all those portraits of his friends and acquaintances. Belleau and Le Baumbach, Zola, Mallarmé, Clemenceau, Chabrier, and the women in his circle too.
And gardens feature later on, scenes from Bellevue. Plus still lifes. He gave as much attention to painting asparagus or oysters as he did to people.
That focus is amazing. But the chronology in our sources ends on a sadder note, talking about his health failing.
It does. It describes pain, starting in his left leg, trying cures that didn't work, becoming lame, needing a cane, making it hard even to get to a studio.
He ended up bedridden. But the sources say even then he was asking another artist about their technique.
Still curious.
Right up to the end. Then, April 14th, gangrene sets in. Amputation. Visits were limited, but it notes his closest friends still came by every day, Mallarmé, Nadar, Abbé Hirel. And his last really major painting, done while he was already sick, was Le Bar au Folies-Bergère.
Yeah, the sources mention the model Suzanne posing while he worked on it. They talk about the sparkling colors, that complex reflection in the mirror behind the barmaid.
That sense of glittering Parisian nightlife.
But also this unhurried and almost elusive tangibility. And the description mentions joyful suspense, yet conscious of the sadness.
Wow. Joy and sadness together. That feels like a really fitting final statement from him, someone who looks so directly at life.
It really does.
Okay, one last thing to touch on, which is important context from our source material. The Catalogue raisonnés itself. The book listing all his works.
Right. The sources emphasize how crucial these catalogs are for understanding an artist. It took huge effort to authenticate everything and also to remove works that turned out not to be his, even if people thought they were for years.
They use symbols for authenticated versus doubtful works.
Exactly. And they mention that forgeries are a special aspect with Manet. More fakes than usual, maybe.
I guess his fame made him a target. And signatures were complicated too.
Very. He apparently signed or marked maybe half of his key oils and pastels, rarely watercolors or drawings. His widow signed or sealed a lot after his death. And get this, there are even authentic Manets out there with false signatures added later.
That's wild. So the catalog we used, it focuses on the core stuff, the oils and pastels.
The definitive works, yeah. Chronologically listed, though that wasn't always straightforward. And they note there are 495 cataloged works, but grouped under 418 numbers, because studies or versions are often listed under the final piece. Shows you the level of detail involved.
It really underscores the scholarship needed to define an artist's legacy properly.
Absolutely, separating the real deal from the rest.
So pulling all this together, looking back at this deep dive, his modern vision, that unique style, the fights with the Salon, his friends, his later work, his illness, the cataloging effort, what's the big takeaway?
Well, connecting it all, Manet feels like this crucial bridge figure. He knew the old masters, learned from them, but he turned those lessons squarely onto his own time. He innovated in subject and style. He didn't set out to protest, maybe, but by just painting modern life honestly as he saw it.
With that sincerity he talked about.
Yeah, that sincerity forced a confrontation. He fundamentally challenged what art was supposed to be.
And that phrase, tried to be himself, it resonates. Our sources really brought that journey to life, the specific paintings that caused uproar, the friends who backed him, those stylistic choices like the flattened space and bold lines, and just his persistence.
You really get a sense of the man and his times from the details in the material Zola's observations, the chronology entries, the controversies. It paints a vivid picture.
It really does. And it makes you think, he just tried to be himself, paint his truth, and face so much hostility for it.
Yeah.
But he was right, wasn't he? Time did soften the reaction. His work became familiar, understood, accepted. That commitment to his own vision.
Aiming for the eternal, as Jamat said.
Exactly. It wasn't just revolutionary then,
Right.
It lasted.
That direct, honest look at the modern world, painted with such conscious skill, had real staying power.
So maybe a final thought for you listening to this, thinking about Manet and everything we've dug into from these sources. How does that kind of artistic sincerity, or maybe just being genuinely yourself in any field, deal with pushback? What does it take to stick to your guns like Manet did when you're challenging how things are done? And how does time change our view of what was once scandalous or groundbreaking?